Anyone who's been with me for a while knows that I'm kind of obsessed with straight people and how they can't seem to get along even though they ostensibly want to date and marry each other. This inability to get along is a very foreign concept to me since I'm in a queer relationship. Okay, I'm kidding. Lesbian relationships are stereotyped as being these perfect, lovely things, but read In the Dream House to understand the homophobic origins of that little myth. Regardless, my relationship is very smooth so far. I mean, we've only been together for 1.5 years and married for 5 months, but it does feel like we're living a little dream. I chalk this up to the fact that we're so good at communicating and compromising that problems don't get out of hand. We both put a lot of work into the home we share, and we have a lot of respect for what the other does, work-wise and hobby-wise. Like, my wife is a teacher and thinks it's cute that I call her overnight field trips business trips, but that's what they are. She's on the clock the whole time keeping these ADHD gremlins alive. And likewise, I'd say that my job is to lightly edit spreadsheets, but she's quick to remind me that I'm helping nonprofit organizations reapply for funding, which is just about the most feel-good government work you can find these days. Jobs are tough here in DC. Stay persistent. Anyway, when it comes to domestic labor, one thing that we do really well that I believe anyone could do, but that a lot of people struggle with, is that when we see something that needs to be done, we do it. And each of us trusts that the other will do something when they see it and have the bandwidth for it. We don't always have the bandwidth. Like, when I'm tired, I get slammed with being tired. My eyes itch and I get a headache and I basically have to lay down and reboot. I can't do elective chores like that. I'll do non-elective chores like taking care of the cats and necessary self-care tasks like brushing my teeth. But I'm not going to do the dishes or vacuum. If my wife wants to do chores while I'm in that state, that's her choice, and I'll do some elective chores the next day. But that's when we don't have the bandwidth. When we do have the bandwidth, what we do when we see the other doing a chore is we'll go do another chore. Like, if she's doing the dishes, I'll go do the cat boxes. Or if she's out shopping, I'll vacuum the house. Or if I cooked dinner, she'll put the food away when we're done eating. Or if I go to sit a cat, she does chores until I come home. Neither of us is very good at sitting still while the other does chores. We're also really good at thanking each other when they do a chore that takes something off our plate. I'd say 90% of our chores are shared chores. There are things that we gravitate to, like my wife is more likely to tidy the living room at night, and I'm more likely to do the meal planning and write a grocery list. But the rest of everything is all shared. What this means is that we get to experience real gratitude every time the other does a shared chore. The thank you is meaningful because we genuinely feel like now we don't have to do something because the other did it first. When I come home from cat sitting to find that she's already fed the cats and cleaned their boxes, I genuinely feel like I have one less thing to do. When I do the laundry and she doesn't have to worry about how much underwear she has left, she has one less thing to worry about. The problem with this model is that it requires both parties to actually care about everything getting done. If one party doesn't care about their home or their partner, then everything becomes the other person's responsibility by default. They don't even feel gratitude to the other person for having done so much to make their life better and easier because they felt like it was a given that they were never going to do it anyway. I'm reminded of a scene from Tehanu, the 4th book in the Earthsea cycle, when Tanar's son comes back home for a visit and realizes that, with his father dead, the farm is now his to claim and to own. He begins to treat Tanar, who had actually been running the farm until now, as a servant. He wanted breakfast then, and expected it to be served to him. His father had always been waited on by mother, wife, daughter. Was he less of a man than his father? Was she to prove it to him? She served him his meal and cleared it away for him, and went back to the orchard where she and Thoreau and Shandy were burning off a plague of tent caterpillars that threatened to destroy the new set fruit. Spark went off to join Clearbrook and Tiff, and he stayed mostly with them as the days passed. The heavy work requiring muscle and the skilled work with the crops and sheep was done by Jed, Shandy, and Tanar, while the 2 old men, who had been there all their lives, his father's men, took him about and showed him how they managed it all, and truly believed that they were managing it all, and shared their belief with him. Of course, this doesn't sit well with Tanar. Just as her son has lived a life of being waited on, she's grown used in these last 3 years to being accountable to no one but herself, and of being the head of the household. She doesn't want to give that up now that she's had a taste of the freedom that comes as the fruits of her labor. This next passage takes place on another morning. Tanar had made resolves overnight. She said, "Wait, you can clear off the table, Spark. Set the dishes in the sink and put water on them. They'll be washed with the supper things." He stared a moment and said, "That's women's work," putting on his cap. "It's anybody's work who eats in this kitchen." "Not mine," he said flatly, and went out. She followed him. She stood on the doorstep. "Hawks, but not yours?" she demanded. He merely nodded, going across the yard. "It's too late," she said, turning back to the kitchen. Failed. She could feel the lines in her face, stiff beside the mouth, between the eyes. "You can water a stone," she said, "but it won't grow." "You have to start when they're young and tender," Jed said. "Like me." This time, she couldn't laugh. Having found that changing her son's behavior is not an option for her, and having decided that she doesn't want to live with him if he's going to behave like this, Tanar decides to leave. She discusses her plans with Jed. "I want to go. It's too late, but tomorrow early, and the master can make his own breakfast." "He'll learn," said Jed. "No, he won't. He'll find some fool woman to do it for him." Ugh. She looked around the kitchen, her face bright and fierce. "I hate to leave her the 20 years I've scoured that table. I hope she appreciates it." This is such a sad thought that even as Tanar is breaking free and deciding to leave, she knows that the house where she's lived for 20 years will condemn another woman to toil unappreciated for a generation or two more as the cycle continues. Her decision to leave isn't a systemic solution, it's only a solution for her. Nothing's changed, really. The only element of hope is that if Tanar can choose to not be a servant to the men in her life, so can any other woman. But her circumstances are a little different from other women. She's a widow. I wonder how that would work if she had little kids or a marriage contract to fulfill. Finally, she tells Spark her news. "We'll be off to Rayalby first thing tomorrow, son," she said to Spark. "Hawk and Theru and I." He looked a little frightened. "Just go off like that?" I love this line. He thought he could count on her to support him forever. Suddenly, the work she's been doing this whole time can't be taken for granted anymore. Suddenly, he might actually have to dirty his own hands and learn what work is. It's terrifying to him because it shakes his whole sense of who he is in the world. His father had been waited on, and now his support is walking away and he can't stop her. "So you went, so you came," said his mother. "Now look here, Spark, this is your father's money box. There's 7 ivory pieces in it, and those credit counters from old Bridgman, but he'll never pay. He hasn't got anything to pay with. These 4 Andradian pieces Flint got from selling sheepskins to the ship's outfitter in Valmouth 4 years running, back when you were a boy. These 3 Hemorian ones are what Tholi paid us for the High Creek farm. I had your father buy that farm, and I helped clear and sell it. I'll take these 3 pieces, for I've earned them. The rest, and the farm, is yours. You're the master." I love this chapter. I mean, I love the whole book and the whole series, but this chapter in particular is so empowering. Just walk out. You can leave. Work, social thing, movies, home, class, dentist, clothes shopping, 2 fancy weed stores, cops if you're quick, friendships. If it sucks, hit the bricks. Real winners quit. I find this scene interesting also in light of Ursula K. Le Guin's most famous story about people who walk away, the ones who walk away from Omelas. In this story, they can't handle the weight of the guilt that comes from their joy being contingent on someone else's suffering, on their being a little child who could never know kindness or comfort, kept under the city, fueling their utopia. In Tehanu, she walks away because someone else's joy is contingent on her suffering. Imagine if that little child who suffered was the one who walked away from Omelas. If they said, "Enough, I'm tired of suffering, so you can have your utopia. From now on, you can sort things like waste management and poverty in your mediocre city because I'm not doing this anymore." That's basically what this is on a smaller scale. It's powerful because it's something women aren't supposed to do. Whether you call it the sunk cost fallacy or indoctrination or any number of things that get women to stay and to work, it's always there as an option. you can leave. Up until this point, I've only been talking about women going their own way, but those of you who've been on the internet for a minute know that I'm making a nod to men going their own way, MGTOW. MGTOW is a group of mostly straight white men who just really don't like women very much. They go their own way. I wish. According to Wikipedia, MGTOW has been implicated in the online harassment of women and domestic terrorism and has been classified by the Southern Poverty Law Center as being part of the male supremacist ideology. I'm going to read this directly from Wikipedia because it's very funny. A 2020 study by Wright et al. Found that despite MGTOW claiming to reject women entirely, some 59% of MGTOW forum posts mentioned women, with the majority, 61% of those mentions being misogynistic in some way. So much for going their own way. Now, I often feel like I'm out of my depths when it comes to conversations about straight people, seeing as I'm not one of them. But I do feel as a lesbian that I can comment on what one does when one's gone their own way. You don't think about the other gender that much. You don't worry about what they're doing. You approach them as friends and acquaintances. You get involved with hobbies. You marry someone of the same gender. I'm joking about that last one, but genuinely, if you've gone your own way, then you're free. These men seem to have declared they're going their own way, wanting women to say, "No, please, I need you to come back. I can't live without you." And that just didn't happen. This wasn't a separatist movement. This was a strike, and that strike failed, which is also very funny to me. The thing about strikes is that they work when you know that you do something that's actually indispensable to the other person. Labor strikes work because you can't turn money into a product without someone pulling the levers or whatever. Wife strikes work because a lot of women work from before the crack of dawn until it's time to drop into bed making breakfasts and packing lunches, cleaning up, making schedules, running errands, being on hold while they wait for a delivery, planning menus, making appointments, and all sorts of things that make up the admin work that goes into being a person in the world. You have your personal assistant, maid, nanny, cook, prostitute. Well, one of those jobs is a little more stigmatized than the others, but that's what it's called when someone gets paid for that wifely duty. And when she stops doing all those things, if the man doesn't understand all that she's been doing all this time, he has no idea how to function. Take the man out of the equation, and she's probably just fine. I'm reminded of a Reddit story, which I'm going to read excerpts from because it's kind of long. All you need for context here is that a married couple was fighting. When we were fighting, I said something really, really dumb that's living inside me and festering. My wife was being nasty and said, "You wouldn't see the kids a quarter as much as you do if I didn't arrange it, and I'm done managing you." I defended myself. I'm not an absent parent, and said something along the lines of, "I'd like to see how long you can manage without me." Consider my foot officially in my mouth. I apologized. She accepted, and I figured things would go back to normal. They haven't. My wife used to include me in parenting our kids. I did dance pickup most weeks, and bedtime was split. I gave baths, made dinner, all the stuff. Since our fight, my wife hasn't asked me for any help with the kids. The first morning I woke up on what was supposed to be my morning with the kids, I figured she was being nice or trying to prove a point. But it keeps happening. She didn't even send them down to say goodnight last night. Normally my wife does this silly game where she sends my son down to ask me to read 5 books, and then we would negotiate down to 1 or 2 and race upstairs. Last night, I heard her racing him and came up to find her doing bedtime yet again. The kids haven't even noticed. It's like she's replacing me. She started running again. She's cooking really healthy and often. Every night I come home to my perfectly happy Stepford wife, doing it all without me, and I feel empty inside. Is this every married couple? No. Is it most married couples? Well, who's to say? It's scientifically proven that men are more likely to overestimate their contributions to a household compared to women. They feel like they're doing as much, and it's just not true. This is so well documented, I feel like I hardly need to provide statistics, but check out the link below to the Gender Equity Policy Institute, I guess, or you can do your own research. It's a fascinating topic, and the cup runneth over. And it also shows why men's strikes tactics like the MGTOW movement don't work, and why women aren't clamoring for them to, please come back, I'll treat you better. They weren't doing that much to begin with, and it's often easier for a woman to learn how to do one of the chores some man claimed or pay someone else to do it than to put up with all the other nonsense he brings into her life. Ask me how I know. Now, I can't stress enough how much this doesn't have to be the case. I love my dad, but let's be honest, nobody's ever an objective observer of their own life, especially when they're a little kid. My stepdad, though, objectively took care of his kids from the time they were little, all alone, because he's a widower. I have 2 uncles, one with kids and the other who doesn't. The one who does 100% knows how to do all the household everything. And I know this because when I visited him in Taiwan and didn't know how anything worked and couldn't read the directions to figure it out, he was able to give me tutorials on all the appliances and stuff. When his son spilled his dessert, he was the one to clean it up. The other uncle never married, and he does all his own everything. And not only that, when their father came down from Canada to stay with them, he lived with my uncle, even though the common stereotype is that the eldest daughter is the retirement plan. Nope, youngest son. They were buddies, it made sense. No, don't get me wrong, my mom was also very involved, but he lived with my uncle. So I grew up around a lot of real adults who were willing to roll up their sleeves and get to work on all the things that make up a life, and I really value that. And my wife really values that, and that's part of why we're so compatible. But we also have friends who are like that, both men and women. This context I'm coming from, in which anyone can do all of the life tasks, makes some people's inability to get it together and their expectation that that should be someone else's problem even more baffling to me. There's this saying in the workplace that I attribute to dating as well: dress for the job you want. This means dress up physically, but also approach your work with maturity and ownership. Learn new skills, be attentive, understand the system, make connections, etc. I approached being a wife the same way. I practiced on my own life. I did the laundry. I decorated the house. I got a job. I cooked the dinner. I got my life in order a bit so that I'd have a life worth sharing. Then, when I found someone worth marrying, I was pretty critical about how we would slot into each other's lives. Actually, I did this in a lot of ways. My wife has something in common with every member of my family, and I did that on purpose. I don't think it's fair to bring someone into a family if they're going to be an outsider, and everyone I'm related to adores her. But in terms of having a life together, she was doing great without me, and that's what I wanted to see. I was doing great without her, and that's a relief when you're her. We don't need each other. The pressure's off. We can focus then on enjoying each other's company. If I had any advice on how to be a partner and to pick a partner, and this goes for men and women and everyone, it's this: find someone who's got their life together, at least a little. I'm not saying they have to have their dream job, but find someone who's got a plan and someone who's working on that plan. I'm not saying they have to be a chef, but make sure they're neither wasting all their money on restaurants nor eating instant ramen every day. I'm not saying they have to be the best dressed person you've ever seen, but make sure they can wash their 6 identical pairs of cargo shorts or yoga pants. That might narrow your dating pool down a bit, but again, I have good news. The sooner you start dating with laser precision, the sooner you find the person you're actually looking for. By the time I met my wife, I had a whole list of things I wanted her to be, and if someone wasn't all of those things, I didn't waste my time or hers trying to be the person she wanted or trying to make her into the person I wanted. They weren't defective, they just weren't right for me. I moved on to the next person, and eventually I found a good match. There's no secret, you just have to be willing to not date people who aren't right for you. And I get it, it's hard to be lonely, but you'll never find the right person if you're spending all your time with the wrong person. And they'll never find whom they're looking for if you're pretending that you can be what they want you to be. Basically, get yourself together enough that you don't need anyone, and then find somebody who doesn't need you, and then you're free to enjoy each other's company without burdening each other at all. Or, keep trying to trick and trap each other, lie to yourselves, tell manipulative half-truths to all your friends, and cry on social media. It's all the same to me. All right, now we've got a little business to discuss. A little while ago, I did a community poll on what media you'd like me to make videos about next, and Utena was the winner by a mile. I'm currently finishing watching the second season, and I have about 5 scripts and a few more ideas that I want to turn into drafts. But before I film anything, I need to finish the series. To buy myself a little time and to clear my drafts, my next 2 videos are also going to be on dating and marriage. This video came straight from the heart, but I have another similar video coming out that's a response to something the Dadvocate said in a video, and then a response to one of the most irresponsible things I've ever read in a Psychology Today article. Watch for that if you like this kind of content. See you next time.